Welcome to TCU Magazine. My name is Florentino Buenaventura, and we are brought to you by Tone Culture United. TCU Magazine is all about giving you the information on how to have sustainable careers in this music industry. It's a challenge, right, folks? And we are here to hopefully provide you some insights, some wisdom, some knowledge, things that you might not know about, and give you some type of foundation to help you, whether you are, a new professional or someone who's seasoned in the business, a viable ideas and thoughts on how to sustain your career in the business. We're going to be talking to icons, legends, obviously professional musicians, producers, creators, industry professionals. They're all going to be part of this series, and we are really appreciative that you are tuning in. So, with that said, I have a very special guest here today for me, and hopefully for you as well. He is a producer. He is a Grammy-nominated producer. Let me clarify. Grammy-nominated, Grammy-winning, multi-platinum producer. He's an author. He's worked with everybody from Michael McDonald to Nancy Wilson to one of my favorite ones that he's worked with is Pat Boone. So, with that said, Jeffrey Weber or Jeff Weber, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Tino, it's always a pleasure to be with you on these things. I love them.
Well,
Thank you.
you're welcome, brother. So, well, we've talked a lot about different things in the industry, and we've talked about your role in the industry. Let's start off with something very simple and basic, because I think there's a little confusion to this. What the hell is a music producer?
It's a great question, okay? And the reason why it's a great question is because in the music business today, there are a series of what I call producer hyphenates. What's a producer hyphenate? An engineer producer, a songwriting producer, a musician producer, an arranger producer. So with each one of those hyphenates, the producer, if you will, has to serve two different masters. If you're, let's say, a songwriting producer, you want to make sure that your song is seen in the best possible light so that you can potentially get someone else to cover the song. And that assures you of an additional revenue stream, but you also have to pay attention to the artist. If you're a recording engineer / producer, you have to pay attention to all of the sonics that go along with making a recording, microphone placement, everything that goes into engineering a successful recording. But you also have to pay attention to the artist. So your attention is always split in some ways. I'm of the mind that a producer serves the artist exclusively, serves her or his music exclusively. And if you need those other components, which of course you do, you basically hire someone that's better than you. I feel that I want to be the weakest link in the room. If I do my job right in the pre-production process, the producer has already established and enhanced, I guess you might say, the vision of the artist. So that's the role, establishing the vision, establishing the trust between the artist and the producer so that the artist doesn't fear failure. Failure is our greatest weapon, actually. And as long as the producer-artist relationship is solid, there is no fear of failure, especially in an industry that is 100% judgmental 100% of the time. So to have that bond between the artist and the producer is unique. And the relationship doesn't happen in the recording studio. It happens everywhere else. It happens late night phone calls, early dinners, disagreements, constant contact, revisions of music, exploring ideas and options. every single thing you can imagine, including laughter. We need lots of laughter. Laughter is medicine to establish that relationship. And if we do our job right in the pre production process, the tone and the atmosphere and the creative process has already begun. And there is a certain flexibility and freedom that I want in my recordings that just nurtures the artist and everyone along with it. The atmosphere and culture of a recording session is very important to me. Have I answered your question, or have I just kind of mumbled along aimlessly?
No, you did. You gave a lot of great information because, like I said, most of the time people think of producers as, we call beat makers, right? Oh, I made a beat, so I'm a producer, and
You know what?
and there's a part of
I
that to that,
forgot
but
about,
yeah.
I forgot about the beat maker slash producer, which is, in my opinion, not a producer at all. Basically, that person is what I call a programmer. And I've been in a recording session with some of these guys where there's a singer and the engineer starts starts the computer. The singer sings. The producer says, "Okay, that's okay. Let's do another one." And he says the same thing 5 times in a row. Okay. If I was that singer, I would be thinking, "Wait, what was wrong with the third take?" Or how should I make this better? What am I doing wrong? All of the questions that every singer needs to know. But if a producer says, let's just do it again, let's do it again, let's do it again, there's no comfort in understanding what the producer is after, so that the singer is completely flummoxed. They have nowhere to go. And the worst thing a producer can say is, hey man, don't worry, we'll do a comp. That's saying you did really poorly, and we're going to have to pick out the words and the phrases, and we're going to piece them together, and we're going to actually have to make a vocal track based on all your insecurities, if
Yeah,
you will.
and that's true, and quite often that's how records are being made today. So, and that's interesting because I want to jump to your process of making records is a lost art. There's only a handful full of people that do it the way you do. Now, I'm talking about from the technical side because your approach, the psychological approach as a producer, is something that is core. But tell us about your process.
The main philosophy of my process is to capture performance rather than manufacture one. So I have decided that most of my records will be done live to 2 tracks with no mixing, no editing, no overdubbing, no auto tune, nothing. If we have 3 guitar parts, we have 3 guitar players. You know, it's where everybody is in the same room. Yes, there's isolation, but everyone's together. So there's that combustive energy that occurs that cannot be achieved with multi track recording. And when people of the finest caliber see other people of the finest caliber, then all of a sudden there's a lift, and there's a kind of this collective tension in the room that says everybody has to be on their A game. And it's magical. I'm just saying, even the mistakes are magical. Okay. And you want that. You want that propulsive atmosphere. And at the end of a great take, there's complete silence because nobody understands what just happened. It'll never happen again like that. And then there is an exhale. And everybody is just like, wow, got to hear that, you know? And it's amazing. So, live to 2 tracks, live to multi track, so that we can give some flexibility to the vocalist to kind of examine his or her vocals and kind of fix or repair. And otherwise, this is the way that I like to record music because it's sonically superior, it's emotionally incredibly more satisfying, and it's financially feasible. Most of my records, we do the entire record in one day. If we're doing live to 2 tracks, I'll generally do 4 songs with each artist, and we're done in one day. And if we do 8 or 12, it's 2 or 3 days, we're done. Then you have something that you can sell. Not even I can mess with it. And it's really an interesting sound when you hear it. I think that given today's propensity for listening to music on your computer, your iPad, your earbuds, um, we're not dumbing down our music for those platforms. If someone wants to hear good music, all they have to do is find a good system, and they'll be amazed. The nuances that they'll hear for the first time, the intricacies they'll hear for the first time, the call and response from the players they'll hear for the first time. It's like, where have you been all my life? And that's the music that I'd like to make. I'll be honest, it's increasingly more and more difficult to do because more and more musicians and singers are not good at their craft. They feel that they're good at their craft, but they're not. I tell my artists, if you could just realize how much sacrifice, practice, money, stress, just kind of rejection it takes to be really awful, you might know what it takes to be good. Because if you can just get up to being really crappy, just really awful, just get up to being miserably poor, then you might understand what it takes to be amazing. If your idea of sitting in a room for 6 hours practicing your instrument is like being on vacation, you win. If you think that practicing for 6 hours in a room by yourself is torture and being in jail, don't worry. There'll be other things for you to do. It just won't be music. You know, the practitioners of the art that we call music are so superb. I guess this is a far-fetched comparison, but they're brain surgeons of their field. And when you walk in as a producer and you sit amongst these amazing players that you've recruited for this, you lose the fact that you're a producer and you become a fan. And it's a wonderful transition for me because we've spent so much time in pre-production. And I will say this, that the heavy lifting of the entire record is done in pre-production. Well, one of my records takes between 1 or 2 days to 7 days max. Pre-production takes between 12 months and 36 months. We kind of microscopically tear apart everything and then put it back and see if it all works. This is way, way before we walk into the studio. So all of my lifting is done with the artist and with the songs and with the arrangers and with the preparation, with my engineer, way in advance. So when we get to the recording studio, the artist will obviously be nervous, but once the music starts, once everything starts, the artist retreats to their comfort zone and they kill it.
Well, with that said, I think people need to take a listen to some of those albums that you've done. Give us a couple of albums that really resonate for you, and how that process,
Okay.
comes out, so that people can go check them out.
Well, I'll give you two. One of them is Diane Schuur with the Count Basie Orchestra. We went to A&M Studios in Hollywood, and we brought in the entire Count Basie band, and Diane Schuur came, and we performed a set. She performed a set. There was no, let's hear it again, let's do it again. She performed the entire set, 45, 50-minute set. And she did it twice, and that was the record. It ended up, it was live, as you might imagine, and spent a year at number one, won 2 Grammys, and it was done in one day. Yes, we did some fixes and things like that, and I was very lucky to produce the record with Morgan Ames, brilliant woman, and we had tremendous success. all the David Benoit records that I did, Linus and Lucy, all done live to 2 tracks, no mixing, editing, or overdubbing. You mentioned the Pat Boone affiliation. We did that, a little bit of a hybrid. We had a large ensemble, and we did everything live to 2 tracks except for Pat Boone's vocal. We didn't want to put that much pressure on him. Toni Tennille, we did live to 2 tracks, 22 songs in 11 hours.
Wow.
It was such an amazing recording. She wept after it was done and confided in me that, finally I've done something that I feel worthy. I mean, these recordings are cathartic in many ways, and there's such an immediacy that happens in a 2-track or a live recording that you just don't feel in a multi-track session where things are put in. It's like prefab housing. You put one thing on top of one thing and one thing, and then you have to kind of like break them all apart and put them in a 3-dimensional stage. Left to right, top to bottom, front to back. We don't do that. We do all the mixing in front. So the whole process of recording is completely reversed. And what you get is something that's a memory that won't ever go away. And the other thing is, all the musicians and the singers, they become a family. We may not see each other for 5 or 10 years, but when we do, it's like we've never left each other on that day. And it's so rewarding. It's why we got into music, because there's no contrived notion that, hey, if I do this at this BPM for this amount of time, I'll capture the pop market and this and that. No, it's sophisticatedly raw, if that makes any sense.
It does.
And
it does.
It's really magical, and what often happens is the artist performs above and beyond their own expectations. They don't know how. A classic example is a record I recently did with a saxophone player from Jamaica. He came in from Jamaica and we worked on something, and I asked him, so what is the most difficult song? And he said, well, I know the arrangement, I practice it. It was a cover of Billy Preston's Nothing from Nothing. And he says, I know the song, I practice it, but to be honest, Jeff, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm very afraid. So we went in the studio, the red light went on, music started, and then he was no longer with us. He was in a completely different zone. And he played his ass off. And when it was finished, everybody looked around and blinked a few times. It was like, well, we don't have to do that again. And I said, so how do you feel? He goes, I don't know where that came from. I released myself, and I have no idea what happened, So that's the magic of some of these sessions. It doesn't happen often, but when it does, it's like you smile for the rest of your life on that one.
Yeah, it's like that when the musician finally hits that mark, a bell goes off, right? So
we don't. It's a real sad state of affairs when a guitar player has to do 10 or 12 or 14 or 16 different takes on an 8-bar guitar solo.
Yeah.
There's something tragic about that, and that's the more difficult component into making music. I think the best example would be the way that the Steely Dan guys made their records. I mean, they came out spectacularly well, and they just had a great idea of what they wanted, and they just kind of kept doing everything over and over, auditioning fantastic drummers over and over, putting, it's exhausting in a way, but that's their process, and by golly, were they great at it.
Yeah, that is definitely the amazing way.
I don't think that works for my process because we just don't have that type of money.
Yeah, that's when it was $1 million to do a record was pretty common. But and the players were definitely rewarded a bit more for studio work than they are now. The first call players, first call player folks. If you don't know, it's the guys that you hear on record after record after record because they always bring it. Guys like Nathan East, John Robinson, J.R. Robinson. There's a total list. I'm going to give you all drummers and bassists because I'm a bassist by nature. But
Well, speaking of drummers, Vinny Colaiuta is one of the top 5 drummers on the planet, and
oh yeah,
I called him a year in advance to do these things, and he's a stunning guy. And I work with Nate and Jr. and all these guys. They're all just they make your jaw drop. Lee Sklar, these are guys that are in our world household names, but in no other world. And you see them, you hear them, you may not know their name. And I asked Vinny, I said, I need you for this. He goes, why are you asking me a year in advance? And I said, well, if I called you 6 months in advance, would you be available?
yeah, yeah.
No.
Yeah, true.
I mean,
That's it. That's it. Because they're still super active. We're fortunate to know a lot of these guys, and we're gonna be bringing these guys onto the show. So I'm gonna shamelessly plug the show a little bit. We just did an interview with Tristan Bowden, who
who I love.
if you're a fan of yacht rock, any drumming, most of the drumming that was done on the yacht rock tracks, that was Tris. Chicago, almost 30 years with Chicago as the drummer for them, and we just did that interview last week. We've got other folks, and these people are part of Tone Culture United. Tone Culture United will connects these musicians to these icons. So we've got Larry Dunn was the first one on board with us, a great friend and changed the face of music with Earth, Wind, and Fire, as well as Tris, who is also, and we're blessed to have Jeff Weber, our producer voice, on how this industry can be shaped, because we have to do it all together, folks. We have to come together to make one strong community so that we don't see an extinction of the professional musician, because these kids coming out there, they're coming up doing music, and they're great talents out there, but the challenge is they really don't know how to have a sustainable career, because when they finally get there, they get that million viewers and they realize the money's not what they thought it would be. And that's an interesting thing. So that kind of jumps us into this next question, which is the big one. How do you have a sustainable career in this music industry? And you are a great voice in that. You speak on this all the time at NAMM. I know that that's a giant can of worms, but let's try to condense it down into
Okay.
kind of a bite-sized version of
All
it.
right. So here's my thought process on that, and the title of my thought process is called "The Connective Tissue Theory of Maintaining Relevance," which is a nice way of saying sustainability, right? Maintaining relevance. It's the mindset and understanding that whatever you do in your career has to be connected to something else that you're going to do that will elevate your career, even if it's in very small, tiny amounts. Uh, a good example is a regular gig. Okay, so you cannot do or should never do a gig unless 2 things are available to you. The first one is you have to have something to sell. Okay, you cannot do a gig in a vacuum. You must have something to sell, because if you do excite the audience, they will want to take something home as a memory. And it doesn't matter what it is. It could be an old-fashioned CD, old-fashioned CD. It could be any type of merch, a hat, a jersey, anything. Okay, you've got to have something to sell. The second thing is you must collect the data. What do I mean? Someone from your team, if you don't have a team, get a team, has to go around to every single person in that audience and says, hey man, we really want to talk to you. Would it be possible to get your email address? You get their name and their email address. Okay. The next day, every single person who was at that show gets an email. Hey Tom, hey Sue, hey Betty. And this is from the artist. The artist says, I'm really pissed. I'm pissed because I know that you attended my show last night and I wasn't able to connect with you in person to let you know how valuable you are to my continued success. I wonder, do you remember those old, plastic hammers that when you hit something it squeaked? I'm coming back to the same venue in about 12 weeks, and if you can forgive me and come again and see my show at the end of the set, please come to the front of the stage and pound the shit out of it with that toy hammer until you get my attention, because it would please me to no end to meet you, shake your hand, and let you know that you're crucial to my ongoing success. You're very important to me. Okay, so anything that happens has to move the needle. Doing a gig by itself doesn't start the needle, it just stands there unless you take advantage of what's capable. And so the mindset, and this is all about a mindset, by the way, is to do nothing is to stand still, but to take every opportunity and move it to the next level, some way, somehow, gives you an ability to sustain yourself, to get to the next level, using those email addresses to add to your base. So every performance you do, now you have an increased number of people that you can talk about it. And since they've seen you before, they may want to come back. So this mindset of connective tissue is very important to sustainability in my world. And again, I can't really emphasize this enough. Be good at your craft. It doesn't matter what it is. Songwriting, performing, being a singer. I mean, that's first and foremost. It goes without saying. And the next part of it is strategy. Right now, TikTok is the kind of number one vehicle for discovery of music. Yes, but we also have, Facebook and Instagram, and these are all propellers. I call them propellers because they can propel your music to more people that will then come around to perhaps see a show, perhaps buy some of your music, and things like that. I enjoy subscription-based services too, but you have to have a strong network for that. So perhaps that won't work initially, but it's a valuable asset that not only sustains you financially, but also moves into creating kind of opportunities for you to create and deliver to fans. I like that option. Of course, social media is a big part of this. Um, Insertions on a regular basis help, but you can't be too annoying because then people just turn off. You have to remember that we're bombarded by thousands of opportunity every day. Just turn on your phone, all the advertisements, all the spam you get, all the marketing calls, all the nonsense. You have to wade through that to find, the wealth, the richness of some of these things that will help you. And I think it's important. And believe me, social media is a full-time job. So if you have somebody that's better than you are at it, man, get them to help, because you can't sit here all day and just put stuff up. It's very difficult.
That is the difficulty, the chicken before the egg thing. A lot of the young artists that I've had the pleasure of helping and discussing how to have relevant careers in this business, the first thing they say is, how do you get likes and follows? And I think what they need to look at is what you've said, which is how do I really own my craft? One of the things I think is a challenge is because people do a lot of their music and their artistry by themselves on social media, on YouTube, on TikTok. I think that it's the collaboration piece gets lost in the translation. So when you think about the excellence of being that artist that is is going to be a moving artist, you also have to figure out, how do I collaborate with other players? How do I make music with other people? So for any young artists that are coming up right now, listening to this, make sure, or watching this, make sure that you understand you need to go out and make some friends in the music industry and the business, and musician friends, and you need to perform with folks. You need to jam in the garage like we used to do. You need to play gigs as an entirety of a group versus just singled out. So that's one of the first things I kind of take away from what you were saying. And then when it comes down to it, don't just think that you've got all these followers and you're connected to all these people, because there's a gatekeeper on the other end of that that says who you can talk to and who you can't talk to when you put posts out. If it's an interesting, relevant post in the mind of Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, whoever it is, then you might get a few more shares. If it isn't, then you're going to find that, especially if it's very promotional, they're going to restrict the amount of people that get a chance to look at that. So to kind of double down on what you're saying, get those email addresses, because you control who gets your message out, who you get your message out to with email addresses. You can't always say that everyone's going to open it, but at least if you've got 100 people, you send to 100 people, 1,000 people, 10,000 people, that those people get it in their inbox, and then from there, it's up to them, rightfully so, whether or not they want to, consume that message. But at least there's that part of it. So I double down on all what you're just saying, Jeff. Did you want to add any more to that concept?
There's a trend, and what you said about getting together in a garage and just coming up with stuff and just performing at graduation ceremonies or dances, or if you could get corporate gigs, that would be great. Any of those jobs are good for everything but the job itself.
Yeah.
Okay, you're going to do the job, but you're learning each other. So a musician has to listen. The art of listening to the other musicians is the same art that a background vocalist has to listen to when they're singing with other singers. The art of listening follows very closely by the art of collaboration, followed very closely by the art of creativity. So if all of those things come together, then all of a sudden you're getting better as a bandmate, your band is getting better, opportunities for low-paying gigs, at least initially, become more and more evident. And this is how you learn. And you have to do it because you love it. Not because you want to have a career, but because music is something you cannot not do. You must do it. You must. Look, I was a musician before I became a producer. Sorry about that. I was a musician before.
Speaking of music, right? You got the music
ringtone. That's my ringtone. But I was a horrible musician. I was terrible. I
feel you, brother.
And I realized, what? Why hasn't the leader of the band fired me? I'm playing, and I realized at an early age, I really suck. This is the definition of suckery, Jeff Weber. And I realized, we're rehearsing at my parents' place, so I get a get out of jail free card. But I realized that I just couldn't do it. I didn't have the idea of practicing ad infinitum. Yes, I took some lessons, but just going home and sitting there and thinking, what, I'm going to do a paradiddle for the next 20 minutes. What, that didn't work for me. And my entire career was based on accident. So I have to say that everything that you said is great. You've got to love what you're doing. You've got to be in the band. You've got to love to rehearse. You got to love to perform. You got to love to create. And if that happens, that's the gasoline that propels you. And if you understand what a song is, if you understand that we only relate to a song in two ways, a shared lyrical experience and rhythm, if you understand how to create a song with a compelling melody, okay, and incredibly unique lyrics, but not too unique. You don't want to be, you don't want to you don't want to be too hip for the room, and it it's a passion that doesn't start, when you decide to pick up an instrument. It starts way before that. When you're listening to your parents' music, when you're listening to the music that your friends are listening to, and all of a sudden you find yourself loving a specific genre or specific artists, and you realize, gosh, I really, I want to do that. How do I do that? And maybe that happens at a very early age when your parents just give you a guitar when you're 3, or you start singing, because they hear you singing in your crib and they realize, oh my God, what are the odds of this person wanting to sing? I have a grandson who just sings all by himself, just to sing. And I'm thinking, gosh, I wonder if that's going to continue, because if it does, there's the love. Okay, he doesn't know
Yeah.
anything about the music industry. He doesn't know about revenue streams. He doesn't know about touring and all this other shit. He doesn't know about copyright. He sings, you know, no judgment as to whether he's good or bad. We know what that is. But he just likes to it. He likes to do it. And you know, I'm pleased about that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So uh, with that said, you know, all right, is this technology working? Okay, maybe not. Let's see here. All right, there we go. I wanted to switch back to me. Forgive me, folks. I'm integrating new production into the show. So, with that said, it's interesting on that topic of passion, because people get into this business thinking they're going to become millionaires overnight, thinking that this is, the direction for to get to the pot of gold. Even like I've been very blessed to be connected to the folks in Earth, Wind, and Fire. They just had that new documentary that Questlove did on them on HBO, and it's interesting that it I believe that Philip Bailey said, at the height of Earth, Wind, and Fire success, he was only bringing home $2,500 a week. Now that sounds decent if you're working, but if you've got only a certain amount of time to be a recording artist and have that type of impact, $2,500 a week, it doesn't necessarily set you up for life. So um, I think to cement what you're saying, if you want to do this, it's got to be for passion. We're not all both Jeff and I, we've done well, but we're not sitting here in the lap of luxury taking Lear jets everywhere we want to go. It is something that you're going to have to sacrifice for, folks. So that's an important part of this, and that kind of segues into the people that you and I connect with quite often. Players who've been doing this for years have, recorded in, groups that have, had hit records that, especially in the jazz world, where it's such feast and famine. What's your advice to people who actually have already established themselves, who are they've seen a bit of relevancy, but it's kind of new generation now, and it's not always easy for them to figure out how to navigate this current music climate of content creators chasing the like and the follow, building social media, trying to find places to play, because it's a bit more challenging. And what is your advice to those guys?
If you do not live in Los Angeles, that's a plus. You do not need to live in Los Angeles. Los Angeles is what's known as a pay-for-play city. which means that as a musician or a vocalist, you have to pay the club in order for you to play at the club. And the way that works real quickly is the club is happy to sell you 50 tickets at $10 each, and you can sell them for whatever you want. But who knows you in Los Angeles? What network do you have? Your parents don't live here anymore, so you can't ask them to come. So what do you do, right? And so anytime you can live not in Los Angeles, you'll find that you can be more creative with less stress. You can come into Los Angeles and record. You can come in and if you want to play, you can do that if you have the funds to do that. But again, like I said earlier, you have to really think about how you're going to get people to that show. How are you going to build that for live performances that any promoter or venue operator will be able to see? Hey, I can put 50 to 100 people in seats, and boom, now you have some place where you can go with that. And, there's all sorts of other ways to do this, but I just feel real strongly that you don't need to be in New York. You don't need to be in Miami. You don't need to be in Nashville. You don't need to be in Los Angeles. It's if you go to Nashville, for example, because you're a songwriter and you think that Nashville's the place. Well, maybe it is the place, but there are tons of people just like you there, and so by moving there, you essentially marginalize yourself, and it makes it very, very difficult to move forward because there's another person that's like you, might be better looking, might be a better songwriter, might be a better performer. You never know, might have better connections. So the idea is be the big fish in your pond where you are. There's less of everybody else doing what you're doing. So start there. You're going to be surrounded by friends and family who want to see you succeed. You don't need to come to Los Angeles, and God forbid you don't need a manager. Okay, so a lot of new artists ask me all the time, so how should I get a manager? And I say, what's to manage? Are you overburdened with opportunity? The answer is no. So don't get a manager. You don't need it. And by the way, at that time, in the beginning of your career, a manager pretty much does only things that are reactive, not proactive. That's another story.
That pesky ringtone.
All right, it's the same guy. He's just been calling me. Anyway, I apologize to you and anyone who hears this, even though I really love that song, so I don't mind hearing it. But anyway, have I answered that question, by the way?
Yeah, I think you have, because basically, I would say though that you may not need a manager, but it's good to get a mentor, someone who can advise you on things that you are doing, because as an artist, it's very personal to you, and sometimes you think it's going to work one way and it doesn't necessarily work that way. So seek out some kind of mentor. Yeah,
I love the idea of a mentor. I wish I had a mentor myself. I mean, I didn't have a mentor, but I want to be a mentor. I am a mentor. I want people to know everything that I know. I don't want there to be any hidden secrets. I want to explain to everyone how to do it right. Because I think there's a plethora of ways that people are doing it wrong. And, we really need to get it done right. You know how to do it right. I know how to do it right. But I think a lot of the younger generation, because they see people making music in their bedrooms on certain pieces of gear that they have very little experience with, they have modest credibility as a musician or a vocalist, and they're short-circuiting the process. And in so doing, they become limited editions, which means that their lifespan in the industry is going to be limited. And I want to make sure that I make myself available to people who are really serious, who really understand that they can't do anything else. So they really do need a mentor. And I'm so glad you mentioned that, because that's not what a manager does. A manager is trying to get money. He gets for everything he booked.
Well, hopefully the managers do give advice when you have those people that can give you insights and have connections. But until you get to a point where that's going to be relevant. You're right. You don't need it. But yeah, the mentors are always needed right from the get go.
Yeah, and obviously, people like me, we rely on records, we rely on consultations. I mean, I have multi-hour consultations where we talk about career paths and establishing, a foundation that you can grow on in the years. And I take this stuff very seriously. I'm sure you've had this same experience where somebody says, "Hey, man, could you listen to my song and tell me what you think?"
Yeah, yeah.
And I have adopted the policy now where I ask, "Would you like me to slobber all over you, or would you like me to tell you the truth?" Because if you want me to tell you the truth, you have to understand that I listen to a song at least 6 or 8 times for different things each time. One time I'll listen to it for an overall audience, vibe. I'll listen to it for composition. I'll listen to it for lyric content. I'll listen to it for melody. I'll listen to it for arrangement. I'll listen to it for sonics. Each time it's something different. So I end up spending 30, 40, 50 minutes on one song. So the answer for me is no. I'm not going to listen to your song and tell you what I think because you don't want to pay for that. I've
Yeah.
spent 45 years listening to songs and working on them. But what are the odds that if I tell you something and your song, and you make that change and your song blows up, you're going to come back to me with a check saying, "Hey, man, thanks a lot." I know what the odds are. You do too. It's zero. So, I take this stuff very, very seriously because this means something to me. Every time someone comes and says that, it's important. And I need them to realize it's important.
Yeah, yeah, no, I 100% agree with that. So as we're coming to the close in this session, we're gonna have a few sessions with Mr. Weber on all kinds of different topics. I think we're gonna tackle the next one is going to be AI. What did we decide on, Jeff?
Oh, AI is the 800-pound gorilla. Yeah,
Yeah,
we,
yeah,
we can spend a lot of time on that. And,
yeah.
and,
There's,
how,
there's
and how, how it manifests itself in the creative process.
yeah,
And, should I be afraid of it? Is it the death blow? Or should I embrace it and move to the next level with it? There are certain things that you can't do and certain things that can't do. But just remember that right now, AI doesn't have soul.
yeah, yeah,
It
yeah,
doesn't
yeah,
have
sure.
commitment. So,
Yeah.
there's still room.
Well, you touched on in our last topic because this is part of that. People are so quick to get to the end result that they forget that the real treasure comes from the journey, right? How you get there, what you do to get there. Um, you know, uh, it's, it's been a challenge in the music industry. People are always looking for the shortcut, and I think that what I get from you, and we've always gotten from you, from your mentoring me, and what I do is that it's the journey. You got to enjoy the journey. Like you said, those 12 months of getting ready for those 7 days in the studio, that's a big part of the soul of that project. And if you do the shortcuts, it loses a bit of that soul, or all the soul.
You music. How many people can say they're making music because this is something they love? People often, they don't live to work. They work to live. You know what I mean? I mean, it's in our business. Whenever we can make music, whenever we can do this, we're so gratified and grateful that we can do this. We never think of the financial outcome because that's often outside of our own control. But the actual creation of music, the actual creation of a turn of phrase that you never thought you could create, but somehow it just came to you. Songwriters keep pad and pen and ink right next to their bed because you never know where you're going to be inspired. You never know what sentence is going to kind of mean something to you, or that turn of phrase is going to be something you've never experienced before. You've got to write it down because that's the basis of a song, and it reminds you of growing up, and it reminds you of your first kiss, and it reminds you of that first car, it reminds you of your first breakup. That's the shit that matters, and there's nothing like it. There's absolutely nothing like it. And if you carry that with you, you're going to be fulfilled. And hopefully the finances will come. The remuneration will come. But man, writing a great song, which is really difficult, by the way, is an incredible achievement. And as a producer, when I hear something in my head from an artist, I'm always trying to capture what's in my head. I'm not always successful. As a matter of fact, the majority of the time I'm not. But I hear it in my head. I hear what it could be. I hear what I wanted it to be. I hear what it should be. But I don't know if I can get it. And that's where pre-production comes in, and creating a culture of flexibility and freedom in the recording studio.
Well, you heard it right there, folks. A lot of great information in this first of the series of podcasts. We'll be covering all kinds of different topics. This one was a pretty broad one on everything from what does a producer do from before, what people think a producer does now, to what you should do to have a sustainable career.
I write about these journeys on a Substack. I don't know if you're familiar with Substack, but I bet you are.
I totally am.
Yeah, so my articles talk about some of the things that we've touched on today. It's called the Weber Report, The Music Industry Without the Bullshit. And it's a free subscription, so if anybody's interested in my wonderfully jaded perspective, we talk about what's to manage, we talk about what is a producer, we talk about, things that are outrageous, like I have an article, and I firmly believe this: if you sign a major label recording contract, your career is over, and I can prove it. These are things that nobody talks about, but they are in our business every day. And we talk about recording contracts. Did you know there's a clause in the contract that says the record company does not have to release your product, regardless of how much money they give you? So, you don't know why they signed you. You don't know that they love you. The fact that they say they love you doesn't mean anything. But you could be a tax write-off. They may have signed somebody else that they've spent a ton of money on, and they hear you, and you're much better, and they know that the only way to eliminate the competition is to buy it. So they sign you to a recording contract. They pay you a shitload of money. You're signed exclusively. You don't have enough money to buy the masters. They put your product on the shelf because they spent more money on the other artists. What happens? Your career's over. You can't go anywhere. End of story.
Well, with that said, let's close out on one last question. And right now, people tuning in, all the things we discussed about, Jeff, what is, if they got one thing out of this conversation that we've had, and we're going to have many more. We just like talking about this, guys. So you'll be able to tune in on other series. Make sure you get to the Substacks. We'll have a list of links on Jeff and how to get to him. If you're at NAMM, make sure you go to his presentation. I know that they're still trying to formulate what that is, but I know you'll be there like you are every year.
My topic at NAMM 2027 is on AI as it affects producers, engineers, and studio operators, because up to this point, the talk has been only about musicians and songwriters and creative people, but how is it affecting the behind the glass people?
Yeah, that's perfect. So tune in, folks, on with many more coming in the very near future. We will sign up for an email, on our email list on www.tonecultureunited.com. So what do you, with that last thing, what do you want people to leave with out of this conversation?
If you're passionate, if you're committed, don't give up. You just can't, because this is incredibly rewarding. If you just strip away all the periphery and just get to the purity of making music, you cannot be disappointed at any level. And I think that making music is magical. It's medicine. It's everything that you want it to be as far as a fulfilling life. If you understand music, then you understand technology. Then you understand fashion. Then you understand food. you understand everything about life, because that's what music is. Music is life.
Yeah, yeah. And to add to that, one of the things I realized um, doing this is don't half step it. If you're going to do it right, do 100%. Because a lot of people give just enough that they think that this is they treat it like a job. It's like, I'm only getting paid this much, so I'm only going to give this much. If you don't give 100%, then you're going to find that it is for lack of a better way to put it, lost cause. And that's one of my, and work with people that have that kind of commitment, because that's one of the things I discovered is that when you give 100% and you're working with people that give 80%, even 90%, that you're going to find that 10% is going to be a hesitation. And when you need to jump that chasm, or you need to make that big leap, they're going to pull back because they're going to be concerned that they're going to give too much. And so that's my.
If you don't bring it 100% of the time for every single opportunity, you're exactly right, because you never know who's listening.
Yeah, exactly. Who's in the audience?
You never know who's listening. So regardless of the gig, whether it's a birthday party or whether you're in an auditorium filled with 75,000 people, you've got to bring it every single time to the best of your ability, because you never know who's out there.
Exactly. All right, well, folks, hey, thank you very much for tuning in to TCU Magazine. You'll see the transcripts as well as the article on this conversation that we had. I wouldn't say as much, I guess it is an interview, but you and I always have great conversations, Jeff. We've been doing this a number of times, so we've been great friends for years. I'm
honored to be here, and I'm vice president of your fan club.
I got to give you that $5 now, man. So, just realize, folks, at Tone Culture United, we got you covered from year to career. And I want to also say a special thanks to one of our partner vendors, Artesia Pro, who makes that happen. Jeff uses some Artesia Pro gear when he's doing some 100%. Voiceover stuff. I am right now on an ESI microphone. So, hopefully it sounds good to you guys. I just want you guys to have sustainable careers. I want you to see growth, and I want you to see that passion that Jeff has so eloquently pointed out to have, and that joy in the process of making music and sharing that with real people. Be the real artist, the education. We want you to have community, and eventually we're going to hopefully have some cool opportunities for you to generate some revenue in your careers. So make sure to follow Tone Culture United on all of our social medias. Also, make sure you connect with Jeff on his Substack, and tune in till next time.
Thank you, Tony.
Thank you, brother.
Appreciate you.
Same with you. I'm president of your fan club. All right, sir. Have a good one.
All right, man. Thanks so much. Talk to you soon. Thanks, everyone.